Hey Pittsburgh, it's Megan. Did you know CityCast Pittsburgh is part of a media collective run by Point Park University's Center for Media Innovation? The center is an incredible community resource, and they bring in great guest speakers. Next up is the Wall Street Journal's Jason Riley. He's a columnist and commentator and a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute with a breadth of knowledge about politics, education, social inequality, and so much more. You can see him at the Pittsburgh Playhouse Thursday, March 16th at 7 p.m. For tickets and more info, go to playhouse.pointpark.edu and use code WSJ for BOGO tickets. See you there. Here's what Pittsburgh is talking about. It's a debate we've all had plenty of times, usually in front of a beer or our computers or even our phones. Everyone thinks they're right. Most people cite sources. Everyone makes fun of those sources. It's a constant back and forth. So we're making it an official debate. Where is Pittsburgh? It's Wednesday, March 15th. I'm Megan Harris, and this is CityCast Pittsburgh. I'm with reporter Ryan Dito. You've lived and worked here in Pittsburgh for many years, first with City Paper, now with the Tribune Review, and one of your buddies, James Santelli. James, you work with the Regional Asset District, and you used to be a news producer at KDKA. You're a Pittsburgh native. Ryan, you are not.
No. Everyone remember that.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Ryan, you're here because you set Pittsburgh Twitter on fire this week. Why do you do this to yourself?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I like it generally. It's fun. It starts conversations, right? I want readers. I want my readers. I want people in the Twitter universe to really think about their region, and I like bucking the status quo a little bit and see where it leads me. It sometimes can lead me to be insulted by many people. So,
walk us through that original post. What did you say, and then what happened next?
So, I saw a Nate Silver post about Pittsburgh's the Midwest, and I was kind of like, oh, you know what? I love this conversation, but I wanted to take it a little different angle. So I said that I didn't really weigh in on the Pittsburgh is the Midwest thing, but I said that I don't think that Pittsburgh is in Appalachia. I think that it is its own distinct region. I guess you could say its own distinct kind of country, I guess. I don't know how to say it.
You're taking the Monaco route. Got it.
I'm taking the Monaco route. I think it's like Florida.
It's the Vatican.
I think it's like California, Texas. It's its own region, Yinzerland, Pittsburgh, So I did that. I probably sent some tweets in a tone that I probably shouldn't have, and got me lots of...
That's a specialty of yours, let's be real.
Yeah, and it got me lots of... I took a lot of heat.
James, I'm not on Twitter a whole lot anymore, but I saw that you waded into this. What resonated with you about it?
Well, I was first tagged by my friend and fellow Pirates Twitter connoisseur, Ed Giles, known as Inclemente Weather on Twitter. And he called me in. People have seen my Twitter bio, and that the location that I have is the Paris of Appalachia.
Right.
Which, full credit to the original author, not my own.
Brian O'Neill.
Brian O'Neill laid it out. He has the copyright and everything else. But I buy in, and so Ed Giles got me looped in, and I laid down the law. Pittsburgh is Appalachia. Pittsburgh is the Paris of Appalachia. And more to the point, I think we should take more pride in being part of Appalachia and help kind of raise the brand and the idea that, people think of Appalachia as being one thing, but it's so many things, and Pittsburgh should be included in all of that.
And Ryan, to be clear, your stance is?
That it's not really Appalachia, that Appalachia is a separate area. And I think that even though the geography of the Appalachian Mountains stretches very far throughout our country, I think that there's really only a certain region that would really be like, no, we're Appalachian.
Okay. Okay. We'll get into that. But what do you think Pittsburgh is? You got to pick a fighter.
Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh.
No, you got to pick Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Appalachia.
I will stand here all day, and this is my take on this. It is. I think you could argue that it's a mixture of those things.
Or East Coast. That's the last one.
It's not East Coast. Let's
okay.
all be honest.
We'll get to it. All right.
But it's Pittsburgh. It's a Pittsburgh land.
Okay. Well, this has generated an enormous amount of buzz here in the city, especially on social media sites. And because everyone loves to fight about it, we invited you here for the first of a few debates that we're going to have about it. You've each agreed to take a side, although, Ryan, I think that yours is a little invalid. You're both going to weigh in on
right away.
a bunch of topics. Most of these came from our listeners and our readers, folks who either like the podcast, read our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter every day, or follow us on social media. So thank you so much to everyone who took the time to vote and support their stance. So again, those categories: Midwest, East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, and Appalachia. We are not including the Rust Belt because there's no fight there. It's not a geographical region, so you have to choose something differently.
It's also obvious that we're a Rust Belt city.
Yeah, that's the one nobody fights about.
There's no debate.
No
easy.
one's questioning
that. One's easy.
that.
We like it. We're good with
We're
it.
the rustiest, probably. You know,
that could be the next topic.
Yeah.
Who's the rustiest of the Rust Belt?
Okay, so I'm going to play your mostly impartial but privately very opinionated moderator. I'll share some prompts from our audiences, and you'll each get a chance to respond. We'll keep it clean, but if either of you do resort to name calling, make it really creative.
Okay. I can fight dirty. I'm capable.
Okay, so everyone is shaking hands now. Literally, I like it. Here's the first one. Pittsburgh is too kind to be on the East Coast. What do you think?
I think that is the case. I think when you're talking about people from New York and Philly in particular, there's a stark difference between what we have there and what we have here. You know, I went off to college in California, and you tell people you're from Pittsburgh, a lot of times you'll get the response of, "Oh, I know people from Philly." And
100%.
No.
Yeah.
Philly is several
Very
hours
far away.
away.
Yeah.
Very different people. It's almost an accident of history that we're drawn in because of William Penn and Penn's Woods, as opposed to, you know, being part of Virginia Colony or the Western Reserve or something.
Yeah, Western Reserve.
So yeah, we're. I agree with that. We are too kind to be East Coast.
Absolutely. I'm 100% agreement with that too. Pittsburghers are very kind, and they don't instantly want to, argue with you or dismiss you.
Except today, right now.
Well, even honestly, even me being dismissed is because I got loud and I felt I feel connection to this place, so I feel like I want to share my opinions about it. But if I was just a little quieter and just going about my business, Pittsburghers super duper nice and super welcoming, not like New Yorkers, not like Bostonians, not like Philadelphians.
I like that we're now just
we can agree on. It's a good start.
Ishing all over the
we're
actual
not
East
the
Coast.
East Coast.
Well, so I want to challenge you there. What about this one? Pittsburgh is not nice enough to be considered Midwest.
Oh.
I think that's kind of the case. And maybe not nice enough, but the form of
Everyone
nice.
swallowed it, and now you're ready to go.
The form of nice that you get from, kind of Minnesota folks, Wisconsin, when you travel out there, there is that brand of Minnesota nice that, I don't know, it's not the same as it is in Pittsburgh. I think in Pittsburgh, in more ways, it's kind of more grounded and more like come as you are kind of place. And it may not always come off as niceness, but it is authentic, maybe not the right word, but it's uniquely not Midwest.
We are going to help you.
Yeah, I think it's the authenticity of it, because I've been to Minnesota many times. I have friends there, and it's passive aggressive. They are.
Wait,
They're really, really nice.
Passive aggressive, like Southerners, for example. Speaking as one.
Oh, maybe, I don't know, but I mean, they're really, really nice to you, and they want to be, and like, oh yeah, help you out, blah blah blah. But they're so nice that they won't say what they really want to say.
Oh no, that is Southern.
These kind of moments.
I like that. That's a shared value.
Yeah,
then.
it might be a shared value, but I do think Pittsburghers up front are really, really nice, but in maybe a different way than Midwest, is that I think you kind of like a little bit like East Coasty, I guess, is like you kind of got to earn it a little bit. You gotta earn that you are not going to leave, and you're going to stay.
Okay. You gotta want to be here.
Yes.
One of our listeners, Maggie, said that we don't say no, yeah enough when we start our sentences. The like, oh no, yeah, this is what we're doing. Like the affirmatives. And a social follower, Brittany, said that we are, quote, aggressively nice and loudly accommodating. What do you think?
Ooh, loudly accommodating. I think that can be the case. I think accommodating is actually the perfect word for it because it's not exactly niceness. It's not exactly kindness in the sort of overflowing heart, overflowing kind of way. But accommodating, we will definitely tell you where, to go or take you there and tell you that it's past where it used to be a Pizza Hut in that sort of way. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's accommodating, but it's not. Yeah, I think that's actually pretty well put. It's not. It's nice, but it's not overly nice.
Okay.
It's not sickly sweet.
Yes.
Nice. So next one, our topography, the hills of Pittsburgh. Those alone make it Appalachian.
Correct. This is where we start to lay down the law.
No, absolutely not.
Here's how I feel and why we are so Appalachian. What makes Pittsburgh unique in the geography and the topography among major American cities? The rivers, the hills, the valleys, the inclines, the steps, and the bridges all come from the geography of being in Appalachia and being in the Appalachian Mountains. When you talk to people who come to Pittsburgh and they're so taken by the views and the vistas and the hills and the valleys and the neighborhoods being set within them, that is instantly downstream from being here in Appalachia. And it's something that no other American city really has that is the same size as Pittsburgh. Earlier on Twitter, I talked about other cities and metro areas in Appalachia that are even close to Pittsburgh size. You got to go down to Knoxville and Greenville, South Carolina.
But they're much smaller by metro population.
Yes.
Much smaller. So I think that's where we get the Paris of Appalachia from in part is, yes, we're large in a big metro area, but we, I think, are still distinctly Appalachia.
And to take that a step further, we had someone else kind of build on it and say that it's the development, it's that history you talked about, James, and it's even our industry as it's come up through the Rust Belt that makes us distinctly Appalachian. And all of that is derived from the mountains, from those natural resources.
But
here we go.
A lot of the industry, it's similar as a lot of these Midwestern cities. I mean, steel is not unique to Pittsburgh. I mean, there's plenty of... I think
that's blasphemous. Like, I think that's actually cuts people to the core here.
It does, but it's the truth. I mean, there's a lot of steel mills in Gary, Indiana. There's a lot of steel mills outside of Chicago. There's steel, there's heavy industry all along the Ohio River Valley.
But yes, when you had the two main steel cities in America, the two places that were talked about as iron cities, you had Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Birmingham, Alabama. We're talking about places that are on either side of Appalachia, kind of on both ends of it.
We're stretching all the way to Birmingham.
I mean, Birmingham is in Appalachia, according to the ARC, the Appalachian Resources Council.
That thing is the death of me.
That Appalachian
so is Binghamton. So is Binghamton, New York. So is Scranton, Pennsylvania.
You know what? I buy into that because you think about the southern tier of New York, and it's very similar geographically.
They're not going to identify it as such. They're not going to. They're going to be like, we're the southern tier of New York.
But I will move the northern boundary of Appalachia further and further to welcome in our brothers and sisters from the southern tier of New York because they're very
Tupelo is in that region. Tupelo, Mississippi, where Elvis is from.
You know what? Welcome to Appalachia, Elvis.
Is Elvis Appalachian?
Elvis is absolutely Appalachian. That's Tupelo, baby.
That is a government program that was meant to spur development and spur money into a region into a vast economic region that needed it. But I think if we're talking about culture and these other things, I want to get back to my point about so the hills being it. I mean, Cincinnati has hills, Cincinnati has valleys, and lots of bridges. Is that Appalachia?
So does Middle Tennessee, which is actually technically not Appalachian, which is weird to me.
Nashville, right? Yeah, and these
not included in the ARC.
Right. And so I think when we're talking, I mean, so does Scranton. Scranton looks a lot like a little minier version of Pittsburgh. It's in this massive valley. If you drive into it, it's in this huge valley. You go down, into this hill, and you get great views. Not as spectacular as Pittsburgh because of our fantastic skyline, but I just think
Ryan wants to build a very small Appalachia consisting only of West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky.
No, I'm saying that's what it is now.
Well,
I'm saying that's what it is now versus wanting to build versus what it is now.
Yeah, so that's the next question we got. For the record, we did have someone reach out to us who's from Rochester, New York, and does claim Appalachia. So I thought that was interesting.
Rochester? That's
Yeah, why not?
What?
Why not?
Look, okay, here's the question. Is it classist to say that Pittsburgh is not Appalachia?
I mean, I got called that a lot on my tweet. No, I don't think so, because I am not insulting or besmirching any region. I love these places. I love them. I love Pittsburgh. I love Appalachia. I love visiting them. My last vacation was driving around West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and loving it and enjoying the nature and the food and the culture and soup dinners at churches and stuff. Like I like that stuff. I think that's fun and
But that is a very narrow definition of Appalachia.
Well, because I was in that region, right? I was in West Virginia, and so maybe, but you're right. I mean, I get the
Ryan's literally holding his hands up away from both of us as if we're coming for him.
I gotta put them
And
away.
I'll grant Ryan that there is a lot of thought that is simply what Appalachia is. I mean, I remember growing up and going to church, and you would hear about kids taking a mission trip to Appalachia. Like they were talking about going and helping to build homes in southern West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. And so again, I'm not stating that everybody believes what I believe and that Pittsburgh is part of Appalachia and that southern tier of New York is part of Appalachia. But I think that more people should see it that way. And what it allows is the ability to see that we have more in common with those places than we necessarily do of Eastern PA, of Northern Illinois, of like all of these places that we're sort of on the edge of the Northeast, on the edge of the Midwest.
I guess what I find really interesting is like, I think that is an admirable task, and I think people would want to do that. And like, you know what? Let's define this diverse Appalachia, and let's have this be ours. Great. That's great. Advocate for that.
Thank you.
Do that. Yes. Great job, James. Great job, everyone else on Twitter who hates my guts. But I think that, but we could do the same thing about the Midwest if we wanted to. We are very similar to a lot of Midwestern cities. We're very Catholic. We love our fish fries. Where else do they love those? In a lot of these Midwestern cities. I mean, Milwaukee has a ton of that culture, Cleveland as well.
Detroit.
Detroit, Pittsburgh region is very Catholic. A little less so now because a lot of people are not identifying as Catholic as much as they is. But for a time in the 80s, we were like 40-something% Catholic, like the most Catholic region in the country. You could say that's like closer to a lot of Midwestern cities, but also like Boston, for example, and these other areas. So that just weighs into a lot of like how we are different from other parts of Appalachia, which are mostly Christian, Southern Baptist, and Methodist, which just leads a change in culture and values.
I will grant you that. I will grant you that the Pittsburgh's population, the immigrant population, and being a Pittsburgh Catholic myself, more like Chicago, more like Milwaukee, more like a lot of those cities where a lot of people came during the late 1800s and early 1900s and settled from, a lot of times Catholic regions of Europe.
Right.
I've never been great at sewing crafts, sorry Granny, but there's a resource here in Pittsburgh that makes all things sewing so much easier for beginners like me. Firecracker Fabrics is your friendly neighborhood sewing shop connected to Cut and Sew Studio in Morningside. Firecracker Fabrics specializes in mindfully sourced, small batch notions and natural fiber fabrics, even indie patterns and general tools, and you'll love their space. Firecracker Fabrics' mission is to foster a safe and inclusive environment for all shapes, genders, and ages, creating in the sewing world. You can shop their full inventory in-store or online at firecrackerfabrics.com. Or buy for your friends. They offer nationwide shipping and local pickup options. So stop in person, or check them out on Instagram for new products and easy-to-follow tutorials. That's at Firecracker Fabrics and firecrackerfabrics.com.
Well, and on that note, do you think that we eat like any one group? I'll give you two examples. Somebody brought up that we don't eat hot dish at our picnics. So we can't be Midwest because we don't do that. Another one was that we love to deep fry things so much, which is very Midwestern and Appalachian.
And American, honestly. Let's be honest.
Well, the example that they used, and I thought that this was smart, was pepperoni rolls, which were born in West Virginia and because of industry, not unlike our Primanti sandwich.
Yeah, but why are the pepperoni rolls so different then if we're all in the same region? Because they are vastly different in West Virginia.
I have not had
they are.
The West Virginia delicacy.
Now I'm getting into it now. So like West Virginia ones that are usually served like in like lunch places and, at schools in West Virginia and stuff like that, the ones you can get in gas station in West Virginia are these little buns, these little enclosed buns. I think there's actually a really great place here in Pittsburgh called Rolling Pepperoni, and they do them because she's from West Virginia, the owner there, and they do them West Virginia style. Okay. And ours are kind of more like we just kind of do like a big bake bread, and they just kind of roll bread into big loaves of pepperoni, and they kind of serve these massive things that you cut up, And there's just a lot of variety in our pepperoni rolls, and that are just so much more different than a very like kind of sweet risen dough that has like a little bit of pepperoni baked in or some cheese and pepperoni baked in. But again, I mean, that's okay. That could still be all Appalachian, but I just like there is a difference. So I guess that's why I like to put my flag in the ground and say, well, this is too different for me to say that it should all be the same region. But
Ryan going in on anything cheese and pepperoni related is him shining, be it Ohio Valley pizza or Altoona pizza or pepperoni rolls. I got nothing to argue there.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to move a little more rapid fire through the last of these.
Okay.
So some more statements here.
Okay.
We cannot be East Coast because we are nowhere near a coast.
No, I agree. Definitely.
That I buy. You got to drive how long to get to a beach?
I think it's 4 hours. It's like the fastest in any direction.
Yeah, we have a little bit.
Unless you do Erie, of course. But does a Great Lake count?
A lot of people don't count it. I would say yes. I love that place. That's great.
So
great beaches there.
We're not East Coast.
Yeah.
We're not coastal.
Okay. We can't be Midwest because we're on Eastern time.
No, absolutely not. That doesn't make any sense because Ohio's on Eastern time.
That I agree with. Ohio is quintessentially Midwest.
Right. I think everybody would say Ohio.
And most of
Midwest.
Indiana.
Right. And most of Indiana. Exactly.
We had a social follower, Ace, call that an enormous hot button issue for him. So I can't wait to see how he responds.
Okay, yeah.
Whose definition then of Pittsburgh do you think matters the most? So we're going to run through these quickly. Sports, like what conferences we fall in, how we play, who our major rivals are. What do you think?
I don't think it should matter that much, but for a lot of people, it does. We get looped in most with the Cleveland, Baltimore, Cincinnati, because that's where the AFC North team.
That's the Steelers, yeah.
Or for the NL Central, that may be a more Midwest argument because the Pirates are in with Cincinnati and Chicago and Milwaukee and St. Louis. Mm-hmm. So that may have formed a lot of what people think of as Pittsburgh being the Midwest.
I mean, sports are the number one cultural touchstone for the Pittsburgh area. That is what most people agree on. That is what most people follow. That's most people associate with Pittsburgh outside of Pittsburgh. They go, oh, Steelers.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're wearing black and gold anywhere in the nation, somebody's going to look at you and be like, Pittsburgh?
Or around the world.
Well, and I'm kind of curious now. I wonder what you think. Do you think that has the same cachet throughout Appalachia? Is sports as big of a thing in other parts of Appalachia, to your definition of it? 'Cause I don't think that they're the same as they are in Pittsburgh. I
think they are. And I think one thing that you can say about Pittsburgh being a part of Appalachia is kind of sports related, because KDKA AM 1020 back in the day, it would have a reach all throughout Appalachia and led to a lot of people becoming Pirates fans, through down to Western North Carolina, because that was the team that they were able to pick up, before the Atlanta Braves came and kind of became the South's team. You had a lot of Pittsburgh associations from people being able to listen to Bob Prince every night and hear the exploits of Roberto Clemente and Bill Mazeroski. So that did create a lot of what I think of as a broad reach of Pittsburgh sports fandom throughout the whole region.
Yeah. Okay. Point for James.
What about how the government classifies us? Like, for example, how we vote in elections.
Well, if we talk about that, then it's Pennsylvania. Then we're all Pennsylvania. If we're just talking about how we vote, because we're in the swing state. We're in that other thing. Yeah, that's how I think.
I think Pittsburgh as a region has kind of been clumped in with a lot of the sort of ancestral Democrat to Trump voter move. I mean, if you think about how far towards Republican voting. Places like Fayette County, Greene County, Westmoreland County have gone. It's in a lot of the same vein as West Virginia, being a blue state as recently as the early 2000s and now being bright red.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that same movement of, people based on where they're from, a lot of post-industrial places, and what you talked about is quote unquote places that have been left behind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of grouping of that towards the, blue to red shift that has occurred.
Yes, but also we can make that same comparison to the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, which is going through the same thing right now. And no one would ever say, "Oh yeah, we're similar to them."
I'll grant you, Rio Grande Valley is not Appalachia.
like 80% Latino and all this other, but also post-industrialism. So I would say that those are just economic factors that push on the region that you could see at across any other region in the country that just has similar economic factors affecting it.
James, does any of this hit home for you in terms of how you might look at us in terms of how businesses classify Pittsburgh, for example, in your work with the Regional Asset District?
Oh, sure. I mean, I like the idea of Pittsburgh as the Paris of Appalachia, not just because I've said it a lot, but thank you, Brian O'Neill. I'll be sending you
Is he a good royalty check every time?
Well, I'm going to have to buy some of his books, clearly. But it kind of puts a light on Pittsburgh for a lot of the ways that people love Pittsburgh, for its museums, for its arts and culture, and for the park system that we have. And it allows Pittsburgh its own place, kind of atop a category that we are not always on the top of. Like, you think of northeastern cities, people don't say, Pittsburgh, one of those great northeastern cities. No. One of the examples that Brian has brought up is in Kansas City, they have the nickname the Paris of the Plains, and they don't run from that. You Google Paris of the Plains, you get a lot of people talking about Kansas City that way. Beautiful boulevards and fountains and cultural destinations, kind of in the same way that Pittsburgh does.
Yeah, but this is marketing, though. This is marketing to me, and this is
that's my job now. I'm a marketing guy now.
But this is a new wave of marketing that wants to define something, but that's changing a definition, I think, of something, right?
That's what marketing does, though. That I think it's those changing definitions that they do evolve our way of thinking about things.
So
not
funny.
unlike the sports, 50, 60 years ago.
Okay, here's what's really funny though about this is that I get attacked over this, especially because I'm just want a full disclosure to everyone out there. I did not grow up here. I grew up in the Bay Area, California, and I lived here for 8 years. And my partner grew up here. She grew up in Beaver County, but whatever. And she's the best though. But so I'm the one who's kind of saying, no. Let's keep it the same. Let's not change the definition of it. Let's say it's Pittsburgh. But then now I'm the one getting attacked over that. It feels like a little bit of topsy-turvy, just saying though, right?
I like to have a more egalitarian feel for it. It's marketing, sure, but it's also a very human instinct to want to put ourselves in a certain place, feel like we're part of something larger. And so I agree, and a lot of people are going to agree with you that yes, in a lot of ways, Pittsburgh is sort of its own thing. It's at the crossroads of a lot of places, the gateway to the Midwest, what have you. But I think there is this instinct to want to be a part of something larger in a region. And I think Appalachia fits better than any other definition does. And so I'm like, all right.
That's a really good argument, James. Another point for James. I just think that in the same way that we can, define it and put it in a place, just like how you can't put Florida into its own. You can't say most of Florida people would not define as the South, right?
Well, let's put that in context then. As quickly as you can sum it up, why do you think that Pittsburgh thinks it's so special that it can't be put into any box?
It is special, okay? Well, I think it's because it is a combination of a lot of these factors, though. And so I guess my cop-out definition is that it is a combination of these Midwestern values, these Catholic values, it is a combination of some of the urbanness of the East Coast. We have a little bit more than that than a lot of these other Midwestern cities, right? That are more stretched out, and then you would say then that we're also less rural than a lot of Appalachia. But again, not all of Appalachia is rural, right? I don't want to say that
people
either.
of Knoxville, Tennessee are going to be at Ryan's door.
I know. And so I just think it's kind of that sweet combination of all the things that makes it really hard to pick one of them. So I say, like like my own home state. You could say the same thing about my home state. It's so diverse. It has so many different landscapes. It has all these other things, but we're all still like, nah, but we're all Californian though.
Yeah.
And
which tells you that these debates happen everywhere. They're
yes,
not unique to
absolutely.
us.
they do happen everywhere. And so I just think as of right now, maybe we will get to a more, we'll be defined as the capital of, Appalachian region. But I don't know how many like people in like that like southwestern part of Virginia are like want Pittsburgh to be the capital of their region. Like I'd love to have
We'll convince them.
I'd love to have them. I'd love to hear from them. And see what they want.
What do you think? Have either of you changed your mind based on the opinion of the other?
I certainly haven't. I'm
No,
stuck in my ways.
absolutely not.
No. But,
Okay.
but I will say I like that we get to have this discussion because Pittsburgh is in that unique setting. We are kind of on the borders of a lot of different places and regions and cultures and people and even food and where food reaches from and where are there, cookie tables for weddings. I will tell you, it is enjoyable to be able to put Pittsburgh and raise Pittsburgh up in the ways that do make it unique and cool and special. And we just have different ways of defining that uniqueness and that specialness.
I also like that there is maybe a consensus or a campaign feeling among a lot of Pittsburghers and people in this region or even the greater Pennsylvania, West Virginia region that want to say, you know what, let's come together and let's say we're Appalachian. Let's say that. I don't agree with them right now, but
we'll get you on board eventually.
But I like that people are doing that, and I think they should do that. And I'm not trying to strip anybody of their identity. I just feel like we should just say but you know what, we're more Pittsburghers, and so yeah. That's what I have to say.
Well, there's a lot of love out there for Midwest, for East Coast, for Mid-Atlantic, and we're going to talk to them. This will not be the final word on this, but thank you both so much for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great.
If you do have a strong opinion about what region you think you live in, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on social at CityCastPGH, in our inbox, Pittsburgh at citycast.fm, or you can leave us a voicemail, 412-212-8893.
I think that was enough. That feels like enough today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you enjoyed the show, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and make sure you're subscribed to that Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with a more normal, less heated conversation about food, our new favorite way to spend a Thursday. All right, y'all, we'll talk to you more tomorrow.
You know what? If I did nothing else, I at least got people to look at a baby gorilla. What am I doing now?
You leave journalism for 10 minutes and you forget how headphones work.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.